Little did we know that low-carb diets are detrimental to our learning, memory, and thinking abilities. According to Los Angeles Times on December 15, 2008, a recent study shows that diets low in carbohydrates may affect our cognitive skills. Researchers at Tufts University in Massachusetts did a study with 19 women from the ages of 22 to 55. 9 of the women chose a low-carb diet, while the remaining 10 chose a low-calorie, macronutrient-balanced diet recommended by the American Dietetic Association. All the women lost roughly 4.5 pounds and remained around the same hunger level. However, when mental tests were given to the women throughout the study, the women on the low-carb diet tested worse and worse as time progressed and also reported that they were confused. Today we're going to talk about the misperception people have on carbohydrates and the harms that come from suffocating our bodies of carbohydrates. According to Los Angeles Times on July 24, 2008, research from the British Heart Foundation from the University of Oxford shows that high-fat, low-carb diets directly affect the heart by depleting energy stores. To better understand how important carbohydrates are to our overall health, first we're going to take a look at the problems associated with the misperception of carbohydrates. Then we'll dissect the causes of this misperception. And finally, what we can do to combat this trendy falsehood around surrounding low-carb diets. First, let us begin by taking a look at the problems behind the misperception of carbohydrates. Many Americans are misled into trendy low-carb diets. To understand how serious this problem is, first we're going to define the problem, followed by the harms that come from not eating our daily recommended carbohydrates, and finally, taking a look at who is impacted by this trend. Many Americans believe that cutting carbs from their diet is healthy and will provoke weight loss. But as mentioned earlier, this is detrimental to your learning. Too many Americans believe that cutting carbs and replacing it with protein is a good way to diet without doing their own research on the matter. In fact, according to Joe Wilder's Muscle and Fitness on March 1st, 2008, there are 4 calories and 1 gram of protein and carbohydrates. Too many people are taking advice from uncertified professionals saying that cutting carbohydrates is a good diet. However, according to the Journal of Nutrition in October 2008, the best post-exercise meal consists of 100 grams of carbohydrates and 100 grams of protein. That is roughly 2 slices of bread and a palmful of deli cuts. The Lancet on March 17, 2007 agrees that diets which restrict one major nutrient are like carbohydrates have poor long-term results and are also counterproductive. This means the body is suffocating from necessary energy required to build and maintain muscle, metabolize food, and to keep a healthy mind. In fact, Joe Wilder's Muscle and Fitness in December 2001 points out that there is no surer route to muscle catabolism than eating too few carbs and relying on protein for energy. Also, WebMD at WebMD.com on August 16, 2007 confirms that glucose, being the energy from carbohydrates, is required to help keep the body working normal. This includes heart rhythm, muscle contraction, and brain function. Lastly, if we cut out carbohydrates, we also cut out almost our entire fiber intake. According to Tufts University Health and Nutrition Letter on February 2009, all fibers are made up of complex carbohydrates except for one. This falsehood surrounding cutting carbohydrates from our diets affects men, women, and children. For men, they believe that replacing a bed of rice and a piece of chicken with a steak is a healthy alternative, which of course it's not. Women, which this affects the most, cut carbohydrates in the everyday battle to try to fit into that one dress they want to fit into so bad. But according to ACP Journal Club in December 2003, low-carb diets do not result in greater weight loss than higher-carb diets. As for children, they are forced into this trendy falsehood. They are forced into the trendy falsehood of eating less carbs when their parents decide to put less carbs on the dinner table. Now that we have seen how serious this problem is, let's now take a look at some of the causes of this misperception. There are 3 causes to the misperception of carbohydrate consumption. To better understand these causes, first we're going to take a look at ad populum argument, followed by the movement by Dr. Robert Atkins, and finally taking a look at the food distributed by companies. According to School Psychology Review in 2004, ad populum, which means appeals to popularity, is when we infer a conclusion merely on the grounds that most people believe it's true. The reasoning behind ad populum is if everybody thinks this way, it must be right. We never tried to research the truth and just believed what was popular until the misperception of carbohydrates became so popular, everyone decided it had to be true. This misperception started from Dr. Robert Atkins with his book, Dr. Atkins' Revolution Diet. He explains the process of ketosis where the body changes its primary energy resource from glucose to stored body fat. He states that people should not eat refined carbohydrates such as sugar, flour, and high fructose corn syrup. However, the long-term effects of this diet weren't studied, and the diet was only a theory, not a fact. People twisted this idea of diet and thought that carbohydrates were just all bad for weight control. This misperception of eating less carbs than what the body needed became a trend. To go further into this misperception, the food that was distributed by companies did not help to clarify the truth. In the 40s, companies started replacing the fat in their food with enriched and refined carbohydrates to help improve the health of the wartime populations of Britain and the United States when food was being rationed. This meant that a piece of bread that used to be 50 calories was now 80 calories, meaning people could eat less, and it was easier to transport. When this occurred, all the packages said were enriched, and people did not know to limit their intake. People started over-consuming calories and carbohydrates. Companies didn't clarify the difference between processed carbohydrates and natural unprocessed carbohydrates. Essentially, this misunderstanding wasn't clarified until 2005 when the American Dietetic Association released its new food pyramid with whole grains being at the base of the pyramid. Now that we've looked at some of the causes of this misperception, let's now discuss some solutions to this misperception. The best way to defeat a trend is to introduce a new trend. To help us better understand how to do this, first we're going to take a look at what we can do as individuals, followed by what we can do as a society, and finally what the government can do to help. We can all do our part by eating our daily recommended and whole grains and wheats. The more the merrier, which will add to the effect when in Rome. I also brought here Cerali's whole grain white bread, an innovation of bread where it has the taste and texture of white bread, but the nutrition of whole grains. Second, we can better equip ourselves not to be swayed by false trends by educating ourselves in nutrition. There are classes here at Mount SAC and at many colleges and universities where we could broaden our education and become better critical thinkers. We can even encourage others to take classes and even go as far as arranging groups of friends and family to go take classes together to help us better understand what the body needs. Finally, the government needs to emphasize on carbohydrates. They need to limit the amount of processed foods. They need to limit the amount of processed foods here in America. In fact, according to Time magazine at time.com on February 6, 2009, Americans eat more processed foods than any other country in the United States. Today we talked about the problems behind the misperception of carbohydrates. Then we looked at some of the causes of this misperception, and finally we discussed some solutions to the problem. Let's not cut carbohydrates out of our diets anymore, because one day we're going to wake up and not be able to remember to learn or memorize anything. Carbohydrates are our body's primary energy resource, and they are required to keep the integrity of our overall health. Thank you.